back to the cabinet question. The cabinet question in Egypt was, okay, who are going to be the members of it? What's going to be the structure? How is it going to work? And after 4 hours of debate, the conclusion was, it's never going to work. Forget about it. Put it aside. Let's have these local committees, etc., etc. Mohammed, you and your group have an elaborate plan on transitional justice in Syria once Syria is liberated. Okay, I hope to see you in a year or two from now when Syria is liberated. If any of this materializes, I'll buy you a cup of coffee. So, you know, I mean, this is unfortunately the contextual reality. So we have to approach the Arab world in a much more imaginative way than we would approach another society.
Well, with that uplifting, I have to say, as most of you know, I am Arab American, and what you say about the conspiracy theories is totally true. Do we have some questions or comment from the audience, maybe? Yeah, in the back. Yeah, the gentleman who's there. And maybe we'll take 2 or 3 questions just so we can go back to the whole panel. Yeah.
Yes, my comment to Professor Sharif, with due all respect, all actually the cultural elements within the Arab society is reflected the different political and sociological dynamics within the last 4 decades. There is no indigenous in the Arab society. That's been changed. But when the Arab society is under hard dictatorship, it's for almost 4 decades. I'm saying hard because there's some sort of dictatorship in Southeast Asia. The 2 or 3 of these regimes never been changed only through military intervention from outside, Iraq, Libya, and Syria on the way. That's still something that all the tradition has been built within the society, all the institutions have been destroyed. This is why we have a broken society. It needs to be built, it needs to be, and this is not an easy thing. This is why the issue of transitional justice, even that's always been misunderstood in the transition in the Arab society, but I think it's widely been accepted, but it's needed leadership. What's missing actually in the issue of transitional justice, lack of leadership among the politicians, among the human rights activists, because they have to explain before to the society what that means. And the last thing, it's what succeed in Eastern Europe never been succeed in the Arab region, because in Eastern Europe there is at that time still the EU, which set the principles of each country need to join the club to make all these principles. In all the Arab world, the Arab League is non-democratic institutions. This is why the GCC now is controlling the Arab Spring in Syria and now in Egypt, and within the conflict in the GCC countries, none of them are democratic countries. That will happen, and that's as we expected. And this is a responsibility always on the Democrats.
Thank you. We need to move to maybe one more question, then we'll turn back to the panel. One more question? Yeah.
I'm confused. Is it individual or tribal? Is it justice or revenge? I suspect it's all of the above.
All right. I'm gonna ask Sharif, then Greta or Roy, if you have any final comments, and then Jamel, you can conclude with the poem or not, as you.
There certainly is a problem of a sectarian nature, but what has happened throughout this so-called Arab Spring is, as our colleague here was saying, there was a breakdown of each of these Arab societies. And the internal breakdown basically broke down along unexpected lines. So in some cases, the breakdown is along Muslim sectarian lines between Shia and Sunni. In other areas, the breakdown is between those in the military, and those surrounding the military in certain corrupt oligarchies and regimes, and the rest of society. In other areas, you have royal families and the members of the royal families and several other segments of society. To answer the gentleman there, Libya is very much of a tribal society. But tribal society in a different sense, it's divided into 3 regions, and so it's the regional characteristic that prevails, and within the region you have the tribe, but it's not tribal in the African sense of the tribe itself, but it's the region. In Egypt, the breakdown has been along political, but also along religious lines. And yes, there is a danger for the Coptic and Christian community in general, particularly in Upper Egypt. But there, the problem, in my opinion, is not so much the Muslim Brotherhood as much as the Salafis, who are really spurred, not in this case, but in the past, by Saudi Arabia, funded by Saudi Arabia, who are probably quite extremists in their views, but also of some other extremist groups like the Jama'ah Islamiyya and others. And so you have a whole different dynamics there, which has nothing to do with the sectarian war going on in Bahrain, for example, or in Iraq, and to some extent also in Lebanon. So you suddenly realize that when the society has broken down, whatever was keeping the society together, you now find a totally fragmented society, and what you're saying is absolutely true. You need to reconstitute the society. One of the ways in which the regimes remain in power, and that is an example of the Assad regime, is precisely to fragment the society. How do you keep the Alawis, who are 10–12% of the society, in power? Is by fragmenting the society, by creating fear among the Christians and other minorities in Iraq. But tomorrow I will address the geopolitical considerations, which are very significant and tie in with that internal breakdown, so that you see a new realignment. Kurds in Iraq with Kurds in Syria, and eventually Kurds in Turkey. That will give you a whole new dimension. Muslim brothers cutting across national lines, separated from the Salafis, supported by Saudi Arabia. And there, the name of the game is, how do you protect the Gulf states, irrespective of the rest? So all of these dynamics are at play, and what I want to say is that there is a very strong innate sense of justice among the people in the Arab world, as it is among people in different parts of the world. But the way to activate, to move the sense of justice has to become from the victim side. You can't start from the institutional side, because the institutions have broken down. Nobody has trust in the judiciary anymore. Nobody has trust in the police. Nobody has trust in the army. So how can you establish a mechanism that needs institutional support from a functioning state when the states are non-functional and the institutions are not credible?
All right, we are pretty much out of time, but maybe either Greta or Jamal, if you want to, Roy, if you don't mind, well, just because this has been so much a movement generated by the youth in your countries. Jamal, do you want to finish, or Greta? You can close, yeah, if you have any final thoughts.
I want to come back to the point of the cultural aspect in the Arab societies. The problem in the Arab societies that people want and need always this only man who did everything alone, and he has like a strong charismatic personality. They are not so much used on institutions and on plurality, on many people who leads. You know. There is always this mentality of the leader. It was Khalifa, it was the prince, it was...
Okay, Greta?
I just wanted to emphasize one last point that was also made by Professor Bassioni in relation to victims. I really do think that it's transitional justice must be victim-centered, and that in general, in previous countries, in other countries, victims have been included in the transitional justice process in a second moment, when there was the implementation of transitional justice, and the attempt of most of civil society was to include them, for example, before commission of truth or during the reparation phase. What has not been done really in a proper extent, in my opinion, is to include the views of victims on what they expect from transitional justice in a previous moment, to build it in the fabric of transitional justice. And I think that's one of the challenges that we need really to overcome to render this mechanism really successful. Thank you.
All right. Please join me in thanking the panelists. Our Master of Ceremonies.
Thank you very much. A few announcements before we move on the evening. First of all, Sharif, if you would like to have some more colorful Brinda-isms, so to speak, we can talk. I would just like to say that the reception tonight will be off the parlor, the room that we had breakfast in this morning, and I think that's the same room that we are also having dinner in tonight. Kathy has just informed me that there still are some seats and meals available for breakfast tomorrow morning and for lunch tomorrow. And so if you want to stop over to the hotel and try to get a meal purchased for either of those two times, that she said there still were a few seats available. Lastly, tomorrow morning for our year in review, we have, I believe, on the program that the year in review will take place at the Presbyterian Church, but I believe the description would be more appropriate to say Presbyterian House. And Presbyterian House is located right next door to the Athenaeum Hotel, and we can certainly tell you at our table where to find it if you have any trouble finding it in the morning. And so again, I want to thank you all for a wonderful day. I know that Roy was cut a little short with closing remarks, but Roy will be back at a porch session tomorrow morning. So you can certainly see Roy again tomorrow morning. So again, thank you very, very much today. The closing session after a while is going to be between a few of our prosecutors and many of the students that have come today around the porches, and the students very much look forward to this time to have a little time with our prosecutors. So again, thank you for coming, and I will see you all later.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just wanted to keep the train.